Something that really bothers me is the use of the term right-wing as a pseudonym for racist. It's a load of twaddle. You can be left-wing and a racist, definitely. Views on genetic superiority and the appropriate role of the state are not the same sort of thing. A term that gets bandied around quite a lot is far-right. What, so if you go a bit further right than centre-right, you'll become an evil racist? Well, that doesn't really stack up if you think about it for more than 10 seconds. The Nazi Party, the National German Socialist Worker Party, were socialists. They built up the state, nationalised a lot of industry, and hated the bankers. They were socialists. Clue in the name. Stalin was an anti-Semite, and Pol Pot, who was socialist, targeted a lot of ethnic groups. To name but a few race-murdering nutjobs on the left. Before we continue, let's just take a minute to look at the origin of the terms left and right. They come from France. The 18th century National Assembly had the supporters of the king to the right and the supporters of the revolution to the left, so not a great deal to do with racism. The two sides have changed quite a bit over the years, but I suppose you could, at a really high level, view the left as wanting to fundamentally overhaul social structures, whereas the right have sought to be a bit more conservative. That is not to say that the right has not been progressive. For example, it was the Conservative Party in the UK that introduced gay marriage, something that did not happen for 13 years under the Labour government. Therefore, to me at least, positions on social issues do not fit neatly onto a graph with a single axis. Economic policy perhaps does lend itself to such a graph, well, at least more so. On the left, you have communism, then socialism, then centre-left and centralist, centre-right. But what is further right than that in terms of economic policy? Well, I think libertarianism, then ultimately anarchy. Anarchy can be thought of as the opposite of communism. While under communism the state controls pretty much every aspect of your life, with anarchy there is no state. Personally, I sit about here. I'm a libertarian, although obviously noting these labels are pretty reductionist. Now, can you name a libertarian or an anarchist genocide? Looking forward to a discussion, but you have to admit it's a lot harder to do than thinking of genocides committed by sizable governments. So, as on the economic spectrum I'm right of centre-right, you can see why I get particularly annoyed at the term far-right, meaning racist or xenophobic. Marine Le Pen's party is often described as far-right because she takes a tough stance on immigration. She is also for state ownership of many key industries. That's a left-wing policy. The Socialist Party in the Netherlands opposes immigration and holds many left-wing views. Is the Socialist Party far-right? Andries Breivik identified as a socialist, however the media constantly refers to him as far-right. And at the moment we're seeing a lot of anti-Semitism within the UK Labour Party. Is that a far-right party? Another term that gets thrown around a lot is fascism. According to the OED, a fascist is a person who is extremely right-wing or authoritarian. Well, in my chart at least, there are huge differences between these two things. Authoritarian is on the left. Second definition, a person who is very intolerant or domineering. Okay, that might be a better definition, but I think that aligns more to the left, as a state that is controlling people's lives is pretty domineering. One of the reasons I bring this up now is the new joint leader of the Green Party, Jonathan Bartley.
Goering wanted to put people who abused animals into concentration camps, so they were quite green.
I'm not
Jonathan,
quite sure whether
to
to laugh or just to say that's incredibly offensive, but I know that I am passionate about opposing fascism in this country, and I'm probably one of the strongest opponents of UKIP, and I would label UKIP in that kind of fascist bracket.
Yeah.
Notice how he's offended at James Delingpole's specific point that Goering was aggressively for animal rights, and then labels around 13% of the UK electorate as fascist. I'm not a UKIP supporter, but I've met quite a few of them. None of the supporters I've met I would describe as domineering or particularly intolerant. They generally don't want open borders, but I don't think that is massively unreasonable. Sure, I can't speak on behalf of the whole party, but those on the left seem obsessed with labelling anyone with a different political opinion as fascist or racist, and equating this with their economic ideology.
We also have to march against austerity, and also we have to march against racism. We have to pull them together. When we do that, I think we make a difference.
We've also just had Hillary Clinton come out and say that half of Trump supporters are racist, sexist, homophobic or xenophobic. Really? I'm not a fan of Trump, but he's polling over 40% at the moment. So is Clinton really calling over 20% of the American electorate racist, sexist, homophobic or xenophobic? I mean, again, pretty big double standards here.
Today, our country has lost a true American original, my friend and mentor, Robert C. Byrd.
Are half of Clinton's supporters racist because of this? No. They will be supporting her for a range of different issues that you may or may not agree with. But I think political debate really suffers when instead of talking about policies or specific ideologies, we just get into a position where we call everything we don't like racist, and that's that. It also severely devalues the term, and people do not know whether you're actually being serious when you're trying to describe something that is genuinely racist. At the moment, in Greece, the Golden Dawn Party holds 6% of the seats in Parliament. If you want to compare that to the UK, that's about 5 times the number of Liberal Democrat MPs. The latest opinion polls show their popularity increasing further. This is their flag. This is them hanging out. What's their economic ideology? Oh, it's communism. So please don't call them far right. French writer Jean-Pierre Fay came up with the horseshoe theory of political ideology. That is, that the far right and the far left are actually quite close to each other. I really disagree with this, as it's missing the libertarian and anarchist systems off the chart. With those on, you can clearly see that anarchy does not tend to communism. Furthermore, I think the West is due a resurgence in libertarian ideas, but it's very difficult to have the debate if there's no place for such views on the conceptual political spectrum. So in summary, right does not mean racist. It's actually the left that's had a pretty bad track record of this, but generally speaking, economic policy is separate from views on race, and what is going on in Greece is terrifying.